Welcome to this information evening. It is focused on attendance, and as I said in my email, I'm going to just be going through briefly, why attendance is important, why we place such a big emphasis on it. Just talk you through a little bit around the legal framework for attendance and how we as a school work within that legal framework, how we communicate with you, arrangements for things like appointments and illnesses. We'll talk a little bit about long-term illness and SEND and the impact that can have on attendance and the support that school can put in place. A little bit about EBSA, and then I'll just talk to you a little bit about the support processes that we have in school and how we can work with you and in collaboration with other agencies as well if there is an issue or a concern around a student's attendance. Okay, so we'll get started. Bear with me if other people enter the lobby. I might kind of pause a little bit to let people in, but we'll get started now. Okay, so I'm just going to start off with some facts and figures about attendance that we kind of know and that we kind of base, why we emphasise why attendance is so important. So data tells us that students with 98% attendance score a grade and a half higher at GCSE, and that's kind of across using national data. It's not something we've made up as a school. It is something that is agreed. Students with near perfect attendance nearly twice as likely to get a grade 5 in English and Maths GCSE compared to those that miss 10 days a year. And missing school can actually have an impact on future earnings. So if a student who averages less than 90% attendance at secondary school could earn £10,000 less at age 28 compared to someone with a near perfect attendance. And again, that's facts and figures that have been crunched over years of data analysis. And, I'm not sure if you're aware of the table that we've got in front of you, but I think that kind of shows you why absence can affect attainment. So, if by the end of the year a student's got 95% attendance, which sounds, fine, it's okay, but that's actually 10 days of absence, and that means that they've missed 50 lessons at our school, because obviously we have 25 lessons a week, so that's 2 weeks of school absence. And you can see there that dwindles down, so that if you're on 70% attendance in a year, that's 60 days missed and 300 days of lessons missed, which obviously is going to have a big impact on how students achieve in school. And it's not just around their achievement, it's also around what students get from being in school every day. The idea that students can get more from school than just their achievement. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go down the legal route now, and this is the bit that's really contentious with parents. This is the bit that sometimes gets us a little bit concerned, because that idea that as a parent you're legally responsible for ensuring your child gets a suitable full-time education from ages 5 to 16. In most cases, parents choose to send their children to school. They don't have to. Some parents do choose to electively home educate. But if you do choose to send your child to school, you're legally responsible for making sure that they get there every day. And they should be in school every day on time, unless they're too ill to go to school, unless you've got permission for leave of absence, which is only given in what we would call an exceptional circumstance, or for religious observance. Okay, so those are the acceptable reasons for a child not being in school. As a school, expectations: we expect our students to be in school on time every day in full school uniform with all their equipment. We expect them to be on the yard by 8:20 in time for lineups at 8:28 a.m. And if they're not in because of illness, we ask you to inform us by phone by 8:30 a.m. You must phone every day of absence unless it's something pre-planned. So if, for example, a child's going in for an operation and you know that they're going to be in hospital for maybe 3 days, they're going to have 2 or 3 days where they convalesce, we would know then what the start and end point is, and you wouldn't need to phone in. But if a child is ill, you're expected to phone in every day just to let us know whether they're coming in or not. So kind of that's our expectations in terms of that. And if your child is going to be absent, we'd like you to ring school reception on our usual number. and then follow the instructions that you hear on the voice recording, which will be to clearly state your name, child's form and reasons for absence. You do this every day that they're off. If you don't do that, and school will try and make some phone contact with you, we might send you a message, we might send you a message through Arbor, we might email you, we might try to phone you, or we might visit. And we can often make unannounced visits. We also often visit after 3 days of absence, even if you've phoned in. This isn't because we're checking up on you at all. This isn't just to check that, whether the child is ill. This is really to see if there's anything we can do to help, if there's any support you might need, or if the child's getting distressed about not being in school and missing education. Because sometimes when a child's off and they don't want to be off, it kind of stresses them out a little bit to be away. So it is a well-being, a welfare check when we do call out to see you after 3 days of absence. If your child if there is a reason why you want a leave of absence, and like I said, that's exceptional circumstance, you're required to do that in writing. So you'd write into the attendance team and you'd state your case as to why you feel you need a leave of absence. So and that is all dealt with on a case-by-case basis. And once we get that letter, we look at whether it's justified, and we'll grant it if we feel it is. Some questions people often ask about phoning in sick. So, if my child has got a short-term illness, do they have to go to school, and will I be penalised if they don't? Well, the short answer is you won't be penalised if they don't go to school if they're ill. If you're unsure whether you can or can't send them in, there is a link on the NHS website. It's actually Is My Child Too Ill for School? And that'll kind of talk you through the different, symptoms that your child might have, and let you know whether it's a good idea or not to come into school. If they're too ill for school, you are absolutely not breaking any laws, okay? If they're too ill to come to school, you let us know, and we will code them with an authorised absence, an I code that lets us know that they're too ill to come to school. So if their absence is ongoing or frequent, if they've got some kind of ongoing illness that requires lots of time off, if they've got an illness that requires them to have hospitalisation from time to time, please do speak to attendants about that, or speak to your child's head of year, because what we want to do is be able to work together to put support in place that will ensure that their education doesn't suffer. In terms of how we communicate attendance with you, so obviously that on your Arbor app you can see your child's attendance data. You can see whether they're in school, you get messages off us for truancy and things like that. So that attendance is there for you to see on a day-to-day basis. Just on that screen there, we've got, this is actually lifted from our school policy, how we categorise attendance. So you can see there that if someone's got between 98 and 100% attendance, we say that's good. If they've got 95%, between 95 and 98%, that's kind of universal. It's fine. It's nothing to worry about. We do strive for 98%, but we know that that's not always possible. But that's someone that we kind of think is doing okay. And when students start to get below 95%, we worry that there might be a risk that they might become persistently absent. And persistent absence means that they're hovering, they're going to be in danger of having 90% attendance by the end of the school year. If anyone's at less than 90%, they're classed as persistently absent. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the slideshow. Another way that we communicate with you is that we'll send out letters. You might have noticed that we send out a letter at the beginning of each half term where we outline our expectations, and we talk to you about the legalities around attendance and how to phone in sick and things like that. And that letter goes out to all parents. We then will send out letters to parents when attendance starts to drop into those intervention bands. So from week 2 of the term, if your child has started to hit that 90% attendance, we'll send you out a letter just alerting you to the fact. It's meant to be a supportive measure. It's meant to, if you hadn't realised, because sometimes we don't realise that the child has had so much time off, it's meant to alert you to the fact that your child's attendance has dropped, that we're a little bit worried about it. And actually, it's meant to open a wave of communication between us. So there there is an issue, there is a problem that you need to talk to us about, that we can have those conversations, and we'll contact you about that. We'll also contact you from about week 6 of the term if it drops below 95% as well. And that again is around, just opening a dialogue between us, having a conversation to see if there's anything that we can do as a school to support. At the end of each half term, we will send out an attendance report that will let you know your child's attendance and punctuality. And obviously, if there's been any improvements or, and if we've been concerned about attendance and it's improved over the half term, we'll obviously send out acknowledgement of that as well. Other contact we might make, well, we will email, we can send texts, we'll make phone calls, we'll do home visits, and we'll also make arranged meetings. We will absolutely always home visit if we've not had contact for 3 days from a parent. It's our duty of care, it's our safeguarding duty. If we don't have a child in school and they're on our roll, we've got a duty of care around just making sure that everything's okay. And again, it isn't about us snooping or checking up on you. It is out of care for the student, just making sure that things are okay, with the child and with your family circumstances as well. And obviously, if there's anything we can do to help, that we can be there. Sometimes we might ask for medical evidence. Okay, if it's a run-of-the-mill illness, if it's, they're off for a cold and it's a one-off thing, we won't ask for medical evidence. We will authorise that over the phone. It's absolutely not a problem. However, if we're starting to get concerned because your child is regularly absent, if they're starting to hit those triggers of 90% attendance, that's when we might say to you that, we need some medical evidence. We need to have some evidence of your child's illness, and we need to know that there is an issue. What can that evidence be? It doesn't have to be a doctor's letter. Okay, we know how hard it is to get letters off GPs. We know how difficult that can be. Some GPs are very forthcoming about doing things like that. Others, it's more difficult. So it doesn't have to be a letter from a doctor or a consultant. It can be something as simple as an appointment card. It could be a copy of prescription that you've got from the doctor. It could be a note from the pharmacy about some kind of medication you've got there. It could be notes of any previous consultations if it is a long-term issue that the child has got. And lack of written evidence won't prevent the right support being put in place or an absence being authorised if you can demonstrate that the child was unwell. If you're unsure about this, have a conversation with us. We've got a really skilled attendance team who I'll introduce you at the end of the PowerPoint to, who are really skilled and will be able to talk you through any concerns around this, about what does or doesn't constitute good medical evidence for an absence. Parents also often ask about medical appointments. Obviously, we encourage you to make medical appointments outside of school times wherever possible, and especially if they're going to be recurring appointments. So if your child is having a recurring appointment, say they've got an orthodontist appointment and they have to go regularly to get that checked, if they've got an appointment with CAMS that they have to do regularly, as far as possible, we encourage you to make these outside of school time. However, we do know that it's not always possible, and what we'd like to do in those circumstances is just to email us in advance and let us know that you're going to be taking them out of school for an appointment. If you can, pick them up from school as close to the time of the appointment as you can and drop them straight back if it's in the middle of the day. In terms of attendance marks, what the best, and this I used to do this with my sons all the time, the best thing you can do is actually get them in for the start of the day, get the morning mark, maybe have their appointment mid-morning if it's possible, and then get them back in time for their afternoon mark, and that does not affect their percentage attendance then. Obviously that's not always possible if you haven't got transport, you haven't got a car, and it's harder for you to come in the middle of the day. That's harder, but actually that's a really good way of making sure that their attendance figure isn't impacted if you can take that appointment and then bring them back, and try not to keep them off longer than needs be if there's no illness involved. I'm going to go on to the horrible bit now, which is what people always think about when they think about attendance. I did say in my email that attendance has been in the news a lot recently. Attendance at school took a massive dip post-COVID. you know, that time when students were at home, when we were forced to close down schools, it was a mass trauma that we all underwent, and actually schools have struggled to get back to pre-COVID attendance figures, and there's a whole body of work that's gone into why that is, but it still doesn't affect the fact that, you know, children do need to be in school. And, you know, the bit that I'm going to talk about now, it might trigger some people because, you know, you sometimes feel like you're being told that you must do something when actually it's really impossible to do it. So I'm just going to talk through the legal action. Please don't be triggered, because I'll talk to you in a minute about, you know, what we do to help underpin anything before legal action becomes an issue. It's something that we never want to do. So it's actually the local authority that takes legal action for non-school attendance. It isn't school. We obviously, our marks go into the system, the local authority take those marks and they scrutinise those marks, and they would sometimes question if we're not kind of taking people to task. So if your child is absent from school without permission or valid reason, and this hasn't changed with support, that's when the LA might take legal action. If you don't work with us when we put support in place, that's when the LA might insist on legal action. And the only other time, well, the other time that they will always insist on legal action is if you take your child on holiday in term time. Again, another contentious issue, another thing that's in and out of the press all the time. You know, if you take an unauthorised leave of absence, the local authority will always pursue fines on that, and that's something that's also totally out of our hands. And obviously legal action can lead to something called a penalty notice, and a penalty notice is when you get formal written warning about the fact that your child's attendance needs to improve, or it will go to some kind of prosecution. So schools must consider issuing statutory action if a child has missed 10 or more sessions, that's 5 days, for unauthorised reasons within a 10-week school period. Now, the word unauthorised is really important. Unauthorised means that we are not accepting the reason that you might have given for that absence, or you might not have told us a valid reason for that absence. So in that case, it would become an unauthorised absence. And for unauthorised absences, we may pursue some kind of legal action. A note of warning here is that if your child is late and arrives to school after 9:30, we have to give what is called a U code, and that again is an unauthorised absence. So if your child is persistently late and coming into school after 9:30, you could, even though they're in school for the whole day after that, you could risk a fine just on the back of that. So that's just something that's really worth noting in terms of punctuality. You might not get a fine, you might get something that's called a notice to improve, which is a formal written warning that unless attendance significantly improves, you'll be issued with a penalty notice. Okay. And this slide now just kind of explains, this is the local authority, this is Manchester Local Authority. This is their kind of sliding scale for statutory action, I suppose. We as a school, it talks in that green about something called support first. And that's really important to us. And what I'm going to talk about next is what that support does look like at Chorley High School, because like I say, the last thing anyone ever wants to do is to go down the route of issuing penalty notices, issuing fines, etc., etc. It's not helpful for anybody. But just I just need to share this with you so you're aware. So you might get a notice to improve if you've had sporadic absence, and it's issued for 10 sessions of unauthorised absence over a 10-week period. You're offered 6 weeks to try and make an improvement, and again through that you'd be offered some support processes, and then that would be monitored, and if improvements made, nothing further happens. If there's no improvements, you'd then get the first action, which would be an £80 fine. So sporadic action issued for 10 sessions of unauthorised absence over a 10-week period where there's been no improvement, and it's issued for a first unauthorised holiday taken in term time. Okay, and that's one I need to draw your attention to. And the penalty there is it's £80 per pupil, per parent, if paid within 21 days, and like all fines, that goes up to 160 if it's not paid within 28 days. So Again, if it's not paid, that's when it proceeds to court. If there's a second action, okay, obviously the amount increases, and that's issued for a second period of 10 sessions missed over a 10-week period within a 3-year rolling time frame. So there is a rolling time frame for this that the local authority look at, and that penalty for that in terms of holidays is issued for a second unauthorised holiday taken in turn time over a 3-year period, and again that's 160. Final action. This is a weekly panel that meet to decide appropriate next steps for pupils who reach that stage. And this might include something called PACE, which is a face-to-face meeting, or PACE by post, which is a direct prosecution. Hopefully no one gets to this point. This is the point that you really don't want to get to in terms of the proceedings. So, you know, we're going to talk now a little bit how we don't get to that point. So I started this off by saying the legalese tells us that it's our duty as a parent to make sure that our child is in full-term education between the ages of 5-16, and it's our responsibility to get them there. That sounds so simple, doesn't it? But we're dealing with little people. By the time we get to secondary school, we're dealing with bigger little people who have their own minds, who have their own issues, who sometimes have, you know, neurodiversities, who are sometimes very complex, who encounter all kinds of issues and problems navigating school. So whilst on the surface, yes, I can get my kid into school every day, it's not going to be a problem. We understand that sometimes coming into school every day can be a massive struggle, and that struggle isn't just the child's struggle, it's often the parent's struggle as well. Okay, so if your child's struggling to attend because of something that's happened in school, okay, and that is often the case. Sometimes something will happen in school, the child doesn't want to go because they've had a friendship fallout, they don't tell you, they don't tell anyone, and they just say they don't want to come to school. If there's an issue at school, your first point of contact is always your child's form tutor or your child's head of year, okay. It's also worth making the attendance team aware of that also. So if you are phoning up, you know, be honest with us, you know, don't tell us your child's ill if there is an issue in school that you feel needs dealing with, because the sooner we know what the real issue is, the sooner we can help you to solve it. So if there's an issue in school, let us know, and try and encourage your child to attend anyway, because if the child's there, we can help unpick issues. It's harder to unpick issues if we haven't got the child to speak to. And we will absolutely work with you to put an action plan in place, okay, whatever that might be. I'm not going to talk about early help assessments now. I'm going to talk about those a little bit later on. If they've got an issue at home or that's stopping them from getting to school, so transport, we can put loads of things in place. You know, we can support with a school health referral. We can support with an early help assessment, which I'll talk about later. We can talk to the local authority attendance team, who work with us not just in a punitive way, but in helping us to find solutions to issues and problems that might be in place for a child. We absolutely will meet and put action plans into place to support your child, and we'll have regular review meetings as well. Just got a slide here of the kinds of things that sometimes come up, okay? Period problems can be an absolutely massive issue for some young people. You know, hitting that first period, embarrassment about, you know, being able to go to the toilet. Please do speak to us if that's an issue for your young person, if they're struggling with them, you know, worrying about being able to get to the toilet, worrying about having period products, any kinds of things we can help you with. And, you know, having a conversation and talking to people about that is really useful. Peer problems at school, problems with other children, please let us know. We can help and unpick that. We can cut that off the pass and help. Class timetable issues, have a conversation with the curriculum lead, have a conversation with form tutor. Transport issues, that can be a big thing. It might be that you live too far away. It might be you've got an issue trying to get a bus pass. Speak to the attendance team. Issues with uniform, equipment, safeguarding team, attendance team, head of year. Is your child saying they're too anxious to come to school? Talk about that in more detail in a little while. Recurring illnesses, speak to us. Family emergencies, weather, caring responsibilities. My child's just saying no. Irregular sleep patterns, anything at all, have a conversation with us. I'm not saying we can solve it straight away, but between us we can probably get there. So The other problem that children sometimes have is they've got long-term illness or a special educational need that is causing a barrier to attending school. They've still got rights to full-time education, even if there's an illness or a SEND need. And I'm sure those of you that are parents of SEND children know that. We will work with you to consider reasonable adjustments to get them into school. We will work with you to ensure that your child's got the right pastoral care, and we'll consider things like, part-time timetables, reintegration. We'll work jointly with other services such as health, CAMS, the local authority, and all those different services. And for those with a long-term medical condition, we will make attendance a key feature in any healthcare plan. We will work with healthcare professionals to make sure that we can put things in place that will allow your child to come into school. The other concern that sometimes, one of the big things that's come post-COVID is something called EBSA. You may or may not have heard of it. It's in the press. It's one of those things that is around a lot, and it actually stands for emotionally based school avoidance, and that is where children are struggling to come to school because of anxieties around school. Sometimes those anxieties are related to a neurodivergence, diagnosed or undiagnosed. Sometimes those anxieties are related to some kind of trauma, sometimes to some kind of condition they might have or an illness. But it is a recognised thing that does exist. So as a school, we use the Manchester EBSA guidance, and we also have a complete strategy, which I'll show you in a minute, that we follow. Some things to remember around anxiety in school. Being at school sometimes helps to protect your child's mental health, getting into those routines, being with friends, being in a social atmosphere can actually sometimes help with anxiety and mental health. It's also being aware that children can be anxious around transitions, and just sometimes talking those through with the child, with us, can be really helpful. What we do know is that avoiding school can sometimes make it worse. It's better to talk. It's better to try and find some way to maintain contact with school, even if that's just through the allocation of a key adult who makes regular contact with you. We do advise, if they're struggling to get into school because of anxiety, that you seek support from your GP, and we can also make referrals to school nurse. And we've also got on our website further places you can go for support. And like I say, we do use the Manchester EBSA guidance. Just something we put together, this will go onto the website, is something we call it our PA-SA process. PA and SA is persistent absence and severely absent, but actually this is geared towards those children that are genuinely struggling to come to school with some really underlying concerns there. So it talks a little bit about the things you might notice. Are they telling you they're frequently unwell? Are they burnt out when they get home? Are they just exhausted when they've been at school all day? Are they always asking, once they're in school, are they always, coming to student service and asking for us to ring home because they're unwell? Are they truanting in and out of school? Are they really struggling with that day-to-day being in school? That's what you might notice. What we tend to notice is that their attendance has taken a dip, that we've got patterns of absence that we're a little bit concerned about, that it might always be, the same day that they're taking off, because that might be something on the timetable they're really anxious about. It might be that there's a lot of sessions absent. It might be they're always asking to leave school early. They might be missing certain lessons in school. There might be recurring sickness and things like that. And what we can do, or what can you do? Well, you can speak to your child and you can get in contact to us. And what we will try and do at every stage is listen. Okay, and we'll listen and we'll take you through what we call our stage supportive process, which always starts, first of all, with an invitation for a meeting. Okay, and at that meeting, we'll listen to you, we'll listen to your child, we'll work out what the barriers are, and we will come up with a plan that hopefully will make some reasonable adjustments that will allow your child to come into school. It's impossible for me to say what those reasonable adjustments are. Every child is different. Every child will have a different thing that's stopping them from coming to school. Everyone is unique. And so obviously our plans have to be unique. We'll always ask as part of that meeting if we can make a school health referral. We'll always advise you to take your child to your GP if you haven't done so already. And we'll also ask you to consider something called an early help assessment. And I will talk a little bit more about what that is a little bit later. We'll assign your child a key worker. who will be the point of contact for your child, and we'll supply you with an EBSA pack if that's appropriate, which the LA provides for us. And then we'll set a review date, and we'll set that review date of no more than 4 weeks. Obviously, if things are going well, fantastic. If that works, brilliant. And we slowly integrate your child into school, and we support them even more. If things aren't working, and that at the next review meeting things aren't taking place, we obviously kind of gear things up a little bit. Okay, and it might be that we might get the SEND department involved if they're not already there. We might get safeguarding involved. We might get health involved, and we might get CAMS involved. And so there is a stepped process in terms of trying to put support in place and work with you in order to make your child, better able to come to school. Okay. Now, sometimes even with all that support in place, things don't work. And sometimes you might just get a feeling that school doesn't support your child's needs. If you're starting to feel that's the case, please have a conversation with us. Okay, we can't guarantee that we can change school to suit your child's needs, and sometimes we're just not the place for your child, and that's okay. But what we can do is work with you to think about where might be the best place for your child to go. Okay, and sometimes it might be that they might just need a different mainstream school. We are massive. We've got 1,500 children. It might be that your child might thrive better in a smaller environment. Okay, and we can look at how you do that. And this isn't about getting rid of you. This is about trying to make sure that what your child has is the right thing for them. What is really important is you must keep your child with us while they wait for a different placement. And I know that's really difficult, but they should still be attending us as well, even if they're struggling to get into school. If your child's got an EHCP, that makes it slightly more complex, because as you know, the school would have to be renamed. That would involve a conversation with our SEND team, a conversation with the local authority SEND team, and a whole review process that would involve the renaming of the school on your child's EHCP. But we absolutely can help with that. It's not complicated. We can help with things like that as well. What if after all this, you're feeling really frustrated because you don't feel like we're delivering or the council are delivering? Because there is a requirement for the local authority, if there is a medical health need that's keeping your child away from school, to actually put in place something called a Section 19, which is a support process whereby education should be provided elsewhere because they're too ill to come to school. In an ideal world, that is fantastic. In reality, sometimes that can be a really slow process. So a Section 19 might be that the hospital school might say they're too ill to go to mainstream school, they can come with us. The hospital school might do some liaison visits with a young person. The hospital school might provide a robot, which is an AV robot that sits in classrooms and allows the child to access school from home. There are lots of things that hospital school can do, but sometimes that gets really frustrating. Okay, so if you are struggling, if you are finding things difficult, please speak to school. We will do everything we can to help. You can absolutely contact your local attendance team, so that would be Manchester local attendance team. If there's a special educational need, we'd advise contacting your local SENDIAS, which is a Special Educational Needs and Disabilities Information, Advice and Guidance Support Service. That's a bit of a mouthful. And obviously, you're always at liberty to make a formal complaint to school or to the local council, but that's kind of, hopefully we won't get to that place, because hopefully we're able to put things into place in a timely manner. Really important to remember this. And some parents, aren't aware, but it says there, can school force me to remove my child from school and home educate? We absolutely cannot. We cannot force you to take your child off our roll and home educate. Elective home education should always be a positive choice taken by parents, and you absolutely have the right to do this. Okay. The school will also, if you do decide you want to home educate, we'll make sure you fully understand the process before you let us know. And then once you've let us know, we would remove the child from the role. And then what we have to do is let the local authority know that you've decided to home educate your child. At that point, the local authority will conduct a home visit, and they will make a decision about whether they feel like it's the suitable thing to do. Okay, we do not advocate for electric home education. That we stand absolutely neutral on that. That would be your decision. If you do decide you want to home educate your child, we always like to do a duty of care visit and a bit of a conversation with the child as well, just to make sure that we feel like, you know, that it is a well thought out thing, but it's your choice at the end of the day. So it says there, if your child's been absent before you take this decision, we will conduct a home visit just as part of our safeguarding duty, our duty of care to the children. You may have heard the term CME, which is child, getting on to the legalese again, child missing education. So if your child is off school for an extended period of time and we're not able to ascertain where the child is, or you don't return from a leave of absence, we're required to inform the local authority by submitting something called a child missing education form. And then what happens from there is the local authority undertakes some checks to try and work out where the child is. And in some cases, it can actually lead to you to your child being taken off roll. So it's just being aware that if you are away for an extended period of time and you do not contact school, that you know you're at risk of your child being taken off roll with us. That sometimes happens after school holidays when people don't let us know that they're not going to be back in time, and it's just really important that you make some contact with us so that we don't end up having your child taken off roll and then you having to kind of reapply for a place at a Manchester school. Okay, so I've talked a lot about something called an early help assessment. You may or may not know what these are. They are absolutely wonderful things. Some parents fight shy of them because they feel like it's an underhand referral to children's services. It absolutely isn't that. An early help assessment, it helps identify needs within families early, and it's meant to provide a preventative support an intervention plan before things get out of hand. It's a way of drawing in support from children's services, from other services, from lots of adult services, in a way that is genuinely going to make a difference to your family. Okay, and what school can do is they would take a lead on this supportive meeting, or we could actually ask for an early help support worker if you feel that that's appropriate for the family. It offers early identification of need, preventative support. It gets you access to lots of targeted interventions. It gives you information and guidance. It helps you make referrals to relevant services. You can get community to support. It helps with accessibility, and they are wonderful things if used well. Okay. They're dead simple. It's basically a form that you fill in, what's working well, what's not working well, what is it you feel that you need, and it's dead easy to fill in. And as I've said already, as part of our PA, our EBSA support and support strategies with students that are severely absent or on the road to being persistently absent, this is one of the things that we will offer in order to help support attendance at school. So, like it says there, we might suggest an early help if you're having problems getting your child to school, if your child's displaying challenging behaviour, if there's evidence of any relationship breakdown, or if you're just struggling generally with housing benefits and it's having an impact on your child. It's always okay to ask for help. We should be helping each other. We're humans. That's what we should be doing. And just a few kind of accolades there from people and parents who've had early help assessments. They've taken part in that process. People saying they're relieved that they felt there was somewhere to go for help. It relieved a lot of stress. It managed to consolidate all problems into one, and someone was there to help them with it. Weight taken off their shoulders. Help with, it actually sometimes brings lots of people together. So sometimes an early help assessment is really useful in getting health and housing and, school in one place where we can get a package of support in place for the family. The other thing I want to talk to you about is something that we offer as a school is a parenting course. I said already that, get your child into school. It's dead simple, but your children now are teenagers, and teenagers have minds of their own, and teenagers, are quite complex human beings, and trying to navigate the teenage part of your child's life can be really difficult. They don't come with handbooks. And what our parenting course, it's actually called Parenting a Teen, does, it helps give you some tips and advice about how you can navigate those teenage years. There is one about to run next half term, so please do look out for an email that's going to give you information about it. It's happening next half term. I think it's after school, I think on a Thursday, I want to say, but I'm not entirely convinced. But just keep your eye out for information about that parenting course. It's run by one of our safeguarding officers, Mandy Roberts. She's been doing it for a very long time. And if you see there, you can see some of the accolades from parents, about feeling more confident handling conflict. Other parents should sign up. Excellent. Really help with communication and feeling calmer and more confident. So that's just something to think about in terms of, navigating those difficult conversations that we all have with teenagers as they start to express their independence a little bit more. So I'm getting towards the end of this now, you'd be pleased to know, and it's been great to have you here. I think there are a couple of questions in the chat which I'll have a look at in a minute, but if you have got some questions in the chat, do put them in, and I'll try and spend maybe 10 minutes just answering any questions. Slide up there is of our attendance team. So we've got Ashley Broadhurst and Chris Mike, who are our attendance officers. They are the ones that will send out letters. They are the ones that will come knocking on doors. They are a very friendly pair of people. They're the ones that will make contact over the phone. We work really closely as a school. Our SEND department, our Access and Achievement department, our Safeguarding department and our attendance team work really closely together because obviously we need to in order to support our young people. That's me, Mrs. Chaveras there, leading on attendance this year for the first time in a long time. Our designated safeguarding lead was my previous title, which I did for many years, so my experience crosses those two worlds. And Shelley Senior there is our TA who works with young people who are struggling with emotionally based school avoidance. She makes contact with parents, she organises meetings, she does work with young people to get them into school, sometimes bespoke work, things like gardening clubs and things like that. So she's a really valuable resource. That's our attendance team, and I'm sure you know already our pastoral team, the heads of year there. So Miss Irwin, Miss Banton, Miss Dodds, Miss Osborne and Miss Baxter, and then we've got Miss Sarwar and Miss Wilson, who are the head of lower and upper school. So that's just our pastoral support team. And then finally, my last slide is just some contact addresses, some contact email addresses. Obviously the admin that you know already. We've got email addresses for our heads of year, attendance team email address, safeguarding, and then that's my email address at the bottom there. So if there's anything in particular that people want to find out about in terms of I'm just looking now to see if there's any questions in the chat. Just bear with me. So if you have got a question, do just put it in. Okay. Yeah, so there are some specific questions around your own children. What I would suggest you do is, if there's questions around days being authorised, do make a call to our attendance team. If they're in year 7, 8 and 9, that would be Ashley Broadhurst. 10, 11 would be Chris Mike. But a particular conversation, if it's something specific to your child, do make a call into the attendance team. If you've got anything more general in terms of what we do, how we do it, when we do it, I can hopefully help you with that. I can see someone's typing there. I'll give that a minute. Okay, so if you're requesting a leave of absence, you would email into the attendance team, and obviously you'd have to explain your reasons for why you were going, how much, basically child's name, year group, where it is you're hoping to go to, why you need to go, and how long you're intending to be away for, and then a decision would be made about whether we would authorise that or not. So just to the attendance email. Just give it a few more minutes, see if there's any more questions. We have recorded this, so it will go onto the school website. Yeah, absolutely right. NHS, often we do have no control over when the NHS give us appointment dates. We authorise, we always authorise all appointment dates. If you've got evidence of that appointment, with appointment card or screenshot of the, sometimes they send you text, and the screenshot of the text that you've been sent by the NHS, we would always authorise those. We authorise those with an M code, which is medical. You're right, we do sometimes have no control. Where you do have control, try and get them outside of time, but we do understand that sometimes that is impossible. So do not worry about that. Have you got any more questions? Obviously, if you do think of anything else that you want to ask or you want to raise, please do send me an email. But thank you so much for attending. Hopefully that's given you a little bit more insight into attendance. Hopefully it's made you realise that it isn't something that we do want to support. We do want children to be in school because we do want them to do well and achieve. And if there is a problem, please do get in contact with us. Okay, so if there's nothing else, thank you so much.